You're standing in front of a fence post. The paint is peeling in long curls, and underneath, the wood has gone soft and gray, starting to crumble if you press your thumb into it. You painted that post less than a decade ago. The can promised years of protection. It barely gave you half of what it claimed. Now picture a different kind of structure. A barn in Amish country. Its wooden siding untouched by a paintbrush in over a century. No sealant, no stain, nothing glossy or synthetic. Just wood that has weathered blizzards, droughts, and brutal summers. And somehow it's still solid. Knock on it, and you hear a tight, dry thud. The sound of fibers that haven't rotted, haven't softened, haven't given up. The secret isn't paint. It's a plain white powder that costs about $1 a pound at almost any farm supply store. Hydrated lime. And when it's mixed the old way, it does something paint was never designed to do. I want to be upfront about something before we go further. You'll see videos online, and honestly, the one that probably brought you here, dressed up with fake USDA bulletin numbers, invented university studies, and named farmers whose ledgers supposedly prove secret 140-year-old formulas. Those details are fabricated. They are a storytelling device, not history. I'm not going to do that. But the actual substance underneath all that decoration is real, it's old, and it's worth understanding on its own merits. No fake footnotes required. Lime washing wood in masonry is a genuinely ancient practice. It shows up across cultures: European farmhouses, Mediterranean villages, American homesteads, long before modern paint chemistry existed. Lime wash isn't a niche Amish secret. It's one of the oldest coatings humans have used on buildings, precisely because the ingredients were always cheap and always on hand. Lime, water, sometimes milk or oil to help it bind. Here's the actual chemistry, in plain terms. Hydrated lime is calcium hydroxide. When you mix it with water and apply it to wood or masonry, it slowly reacts with carbon dioxide in the air and converts into calcium carbonate. Essentially, it turns into a soft form of limestone right there on the surface and slightly inside the material. This process is called carbonation, and it's well documented in historic preservation literature. It's why old lime-washed stone buildings across Europe have held up for centuries with periodic re-lime washing rather than modern paint. The reason it works differently than paint comes down to breathability. Modern latex and oil paints form a continuous film. That film is great at keeping bulk water out, but it also traps moisture that's already inside the wood or that sneaks in through any crack, seam, or nail hole. Wood is hygroscopic. It absorbs and releases moisture constantly with the weather. When you seal it in plastic like paint film, moisture gets trapped underneath, and that trapped moisture is exactly what feeds wood-rotting fungi. This is a real, well-understood failure mode in building science, and it's a legitimate criticism of some modern coatings, especially on older wood that wasn't designed to be sealed airtight. Lime wash behaves differently. It's porous. It allows the wood to keep breathing. Moisture that gets in can also get out, while raising the pH of the wood surface high enough that it becomes a poor environment for the fungi and insects that cause decay. Highly alkaline surfaces are inhospitable to most wood rot fungi, which prefer a more neutral to acidic environment. That's the real mechanism, and it doesn't need an invented percentage from a fake Penn State study to be worth caring about. Now, does it last 50, 80, 150 years untouched, the way some viral claims suggest? That's where I want to be honest rather than sensational. Traditional lime wash is not a permanent, one-time forever coating. It weathers, it can chalk off over time, and on wood specifically, as opposed to stone or masonry, where it has its strongest track record. It typically needs to be refreshed every several years to a decade or so, depending on climate and exposure. Similar in spirit to how agricultural buildings historically got re-lime washed as routine maintenance rather than a permanent fix applied once. The idea that a single application locks in protection for a century isn't supported by the material science. It's a marketing exaggeration in the other direction, just as much a fiction as anything the paint industry might tell you. What is true, and worth taking seriously, is the cost and the philosophy behind it. A traditional lime wash mix, hydrated lime, water, sometimes a binder like skim milk casein or a small amount of natural oil, costs a fraction of commercial exterior paint. You're talking single dollars per gallon equivalent of coverage versus $30, $40, $50 a gallon for quality exterior paint. Over a lifetime of maintaining fences, sheds, barns, and outbuildings, that adds up to real money, even if you're reapplying more often than paint companies would have you believe paint needs to be reapplied. There's also something honest in the maintenance philosophy itself. Lime Wash asks you to treat wood protection as ongoing stewardship, a light seasonal or multi-year refresh, rather than a one-time purchase you forget about until it visibly fails. Paint invites neglect because it hides problems under a film until that film cracks and the rot underneath is already advanced. Lime Wash, being thinner and less opaque, tends to show you the condition of the wood underneath more honestly, which means you catch problems earlier. So how do you actually do this if you want to try it on a fence, a shed, or an old barn? Pick dry weather, at least a couple of days without rain forecast, ideally more. Start by cleaning the surface. If there's old failing paint, scrape or wire brush off anything loose. You don't need to strip to bare wood, but you do want to remove flaking material and open up the surface a bit. If there are soft, rotted pockets, dig out what's punky with a screwdriver or chisel until you hit sound wood. Lime Wash helps prevent future decay, but it won't reverse damage that's already happened. For the mix, a simple, well-documented traditional approach is hydrated lime mixed with water to a thin, milky consistency. Roughly 1 part lime to 2 or 3 parts water is a common starting ratio. Adjust it until it brushes on smoothly without being watery or pasty. Some traditional recipes add a small amount of skim milk for the casein, which acts as a mild binder, or a splash of linseed oil for slight extra water resistance. Salt is sometimes added in small amounts as a traditional additive, though its main documented benefit is minor mold resistance rather than any dramatic strength increase. Mix in a plastic or wooden container. Lime is caustic enough that it can react with and corrode some metals over time, and it will irritate skin. So gloves and eye protection are a good idea. Apply with a natural bristle brush in thin coats. Thin is actually correct here, not a shortcut. Lime Wash is meant to go on in multiple light coats rather than one thick one, because thin layers carbonate more evenly and adhere better. Let each coat dry for a day before the next. 2 to 3 coats is typical for a fresh application. After it's on, don't panic if it looks pale, slightly chalky, or uneven at first. That's normal, and it will even out as it cures over the following weeks. Rain in the early days can cause some initial washing, which is why dry weather matters for application. But once cured, it holds up reasonably well to weather while still letting the wood breathe underneath. The bigger point I want to leave you with isn't a secret formula or a hidden ledger. It's a genuinely useful piece of building science that's been somewhat crowded out of mainstream home improvement advice, not because of some grand conspiracy, but because modern paint is more convenient, more colorful, and more heavily marketed, while Lime Wash requires more frequent, hands-on maintenance and gives you a more muted, traditional look that not everyone wants. Convenience and marketing budgets shape what shows up in the paint aisle far more than any secret suppression campaign does. That's a less dramatic story than the industry hid this from you, but it's a true one, and I think the real technique is interesting enough to stand on its own without needing an invented conspiracy to make it compelling. If you've got an old fence, an unused shed, or an outbuilding where the look of raw, breathable, low maintenance would appeals to you more than a glossy painted finish, Lime Wash is a legitimate, centuries-old option worth trying. Just go in expecting to refresh it periodically, not to forget about it forever. It's a genuinely different way of caring for wood, not a way of avoiding caring for it altogether. And if you do try it, the best test is the same one people have used for centuries. Come back to it in a season or two, knock on the wood, and listen for that dry, solid sound. That's the real proof, no fabricated study required.